Howdy, folks. Welcome to this week's Ag Report. So this week, we're going to touch a little bit on some legislation down in Austin called Right to Farm. Okay, you may or may not have heard about these pieces of legislation. There's one in the House, one in the Senate. They're basically mirror images of themselves. So we're just going to talk about kind of the concept or what the proposal is in general, not necessarily one or the other, because they're both very, very, very similar. So before I start, let me give you a little background of where I'm speaking from. In 2018, I was elected as a Texas Farm Bureau state director. I represent 16 counties here in North Texas. So I start in Hill County and I go all the way out to Fannin and go all the way up to Grayson, go out to Parker, Hood, Somerville, all through the Metroplex. I have rural areas and I have very urban areas. I represent about 88,000 member families in those 16 counties through there. So that's kind of where I'm speaking from. That's where my knowledge is coming from and my experience is coming from. So the Right to Farm bills, okay, what this is. So let's say that you are a small producer and you are farming or ranching, either way, in an urban area, okay? So around, let's say, in the 1940s, okay, about 90% of folks in the 1940s directly had somebody in their family that farmed a ranch. So if they had a question, they could ask grandma or grandpa or Uncle Henry or Aunt Sue or something like that. Okay, they had a direct connection there of if they were driving down the road and they looked out the window and they saw a field, whether that be a pasture or a cropland or something like that, they could ask. So by the 1960s, 70s, something like that, that had changed a whole lot. And I'm going to say about 50% of people still had a connection back to the farm where they could ask those questions. So here we are in 2023, and I would venture to say that about 95% of people no longer have a connection to a farm or ranch. So they do not have somebody directly in their family that they can go ask questions to. Okay. So when you have houses that get built along the edges of field and things like that, and there is cattle there, or there is a crop being produced, there are different things that happen at different times of the year, and like we've talked about a bunch on here, they happen for reasons. But now the folks in the houses, they don't have somebody in their family that they can ask anymore, okay? And so they may be wondering why the grass is growing up, because they look out the front yard and the city or the state highway department, they come through about once a month and they mow the right of ways on the roads and everything, keep it mowed down. But they're looking out their back window and they notice this field continues to grow, and they don't understand why it should be mowed like the rest. Well, as a rancher or even as a farmer, we plant specific hay crops to grow up to get a best height possible, because the best height means more tonnage for us to produce in hay. And so we let it grow up, and that may take 3 months. Like right now, folks are starting to sow hay grazer or Sudan or forage sorghum, all the same thing, just different names. And that won't get baled till late in June, maybe even the 1st of July, depending on the weather. And so as you can see, it takes time. Well, there's misunderstandings that go on, and they don't understand why that may be growing up like that. And so then they start making phone calls to city councils and county councils and different things, homeowners associations and stuff like that, going, hey, this field over here is not getting mowed like the right of way and the highway and stuff. And so that's what this legislation is looking to kind of help with. So they are in the legislation, what it is asking is, it is saying they're going to get a third party, which is TAMU, Texas Agri-Life Association, to come up with best farming practices, best farming ranching practices, just kind of like a little guidebook kind of thing. Texas Agri-Life Extension Service has been around for many, many, many years and helps with a lot of different things through 4-H and everything. They have no political ambitions whatsoever, so they're totally third party removed. So they're going to have, best farming practices. And what this is saying is, before actions are taken, like cutting down the hay or something like that, mowing down the hay, or ordinances that it maybe has violated, an ordinance of being too tall, that is a normal practice to let that hay grow up until it is mature, and then bale it. And so it kind of gives a reference book. Now you might think, well, why a reference book? Well, remember what I was telling you, folks don't have somebody to go ask anymore. And so that would help them to get some information, and it would help them to believe that information is fair and accurate. Because remember, AgriLife Extension is over here on its own. It has no no profit to be made, or no leverage or anything like that to be given. So it doesn't really, it's no skin off their back, as they would say. So what this is doing is telling city councils and things like that before you pass an agriculture based, we're talking agriculture, so we got blinders on. We're not talking about industry or anything like that. We're talking agriculture. In a nutshell, it's before you enact new policies, new ordinances against agriculture, you need to go over here and look at this book and go, okay, is what we're fixing to ban a regular practice? So let's just say baling hay, okay, and let's say that and a lot of towns have this. They have a 6 or 8 inch grass height rule, that if it gets over that height, you can be fined, and the city can go mow it down and send you a bill for mowing it. Okay. And that's nothing new. That's kind of a standard guideline that a lot of cities have. Now, most cities put a clause in there, except for agriculture production, because their forefathers understood that you can't do that if you're trying to raise hay, or even if you're trying to graze cattle, because in episodes prior, we've talked about standing forage or standing hay. So in the springtime, and it's a good thing, we get quick and spring growth. Everything greens up and grows. The weather's not too hot. The grass, grows through itself. Well, it's a good thing when the cattle can't keep it all eaten down, and it grows faster than the cattle eat, okay? Because come July, what happens? It gets hot and dry. So now you have this, standing storage there that the cattle will eat back down. And as you know, a lot of times in August, when we hit, drought, it looks like a desert out there. They've eaten all that up. And so that's one thing that happens is folks will complain that even though there's cattle out there and stuff, they want it mowed like a golf course and kept short. And that's not fair to that rancher, because now you have destroyed all of his storage capacity for July and August in there. And so that's what they would be able to go and do is, normal grass, heights or whatever. It would kind of give you, an explanation, maybe like I've given you about standing forage and stuff. And so it's kind of that reference book. Now that goes along for farming as well. One place in North Texas that I was asked to help with corn. Folks think of corn as corn on the cob, a green giant, the little green niblets and things like that. And that is corn, but there's also another type of corn called feed corn. And so it has to dry down in the field to 14% moisture or below before it's harvestable. Well, there was a corn crop in North Texas, and I was contacted to help give some understanding. There was a homeowners association that thought the corn had been abandoned because it had turned brown. They thought that once the corn had turned brown, it was completely useless and of no value. And so they were concerned that it had been abandoned, but it just hadn't been harvested yet because the farmer was waiting for it to dry down. And so that's where I was asked to kind of come in and explain the process, explain kind of what was going on, out in that field. But that's another example of by having things like that. They had a petition signed, and they were at the city council to take action on this. And so that having that reference guide would be another thing, in there. Now, you may be thinking, well, does this give farmers and ranchers just free rein to do whatever they want to? No, it does not. There are provisions in there for imminent public health to protect if there is some serious infractions going on that are going to endanger the public health. Certainly, there can be things taken care of there. But what this is, designed to do, this is for your producers, your small producers that are in urban areas. Nothing wrong with houses getting built alongside of the field. We just all need to be able to kind of cooperate and understand, what's going on there on both sides of the fence. And hopefully this is a way to give some explanation to what folks are seeing out in the field. So anyways, like always, if you have, questions or concerns, maybe you're driving along the field sometime this summer and you're thinking, well, what in the world's going on there? Reach out to the Waxahachie Sun. We'll do the best we can to try and be your connection to agriculture and explain, what it is that's going on and why you're seeing it. Y'all take care now.